we have Xaba, who today is willing to give us a very 10,000 feet view of how to get familiar with FreeRouter code. And this is why I specifically invited Cristina and Carmen, because they will be really interested in knowing how to start getting familiar with FreeRouter code and be able to extend it. For Cristina, it might be useful to add some Polka awareness, and for Carmen also to try to understand how this traffic steering can be done. We have done some tests recently with traffic steering, and we had some new developments, new conclusion that we'll share this offline with Carmen. I have seen that we have some limitation at the P4 level, and we see how this can be overcome at some point. But all in all, I'm pretty sure that both of you will be interested in knowing more about it. So I think that without further ado, I think that Xaba, the floor is yours. One thing that is important, Cristina and Carmen, is that don't hesitate to stop Xaba. If you have any question, if you feel that this is 1 hour for discussion, to exchange opinions, ideas, and not, I would say, a regular webinar where the information comes from us and unidirectionally. We need to have this exchange with you, and so don't hesitate to interrupt Xaba if something is not understood correctly, or simply if you need more insight, because you might observe that he is very fast. So, okay, Xaba, the floor is yours. Maybe you want to say some word, yes?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this will be very useful for us. Just to give some context, so we have our data plane code that's already working in the Tofino switches, and we had our control plane code when we were using the BMV2 with the emulator. So now we are in the point that we want to understand how to port our control plane code to FreeRouter, so we can execute also the unit tests at RARE. So our main goal is to integrate our code in the RARE repository, and for that we need to develop this control plane side and understand how to do that using FreeRouter.
Very nice, very nice. What kind of control plane do you developing? So how it interacts with the network? I mean, is it routing protocol or something like this?
Yeah, it's a source routing protocol. So we don't use table lookups for routing, but we need to configure some specific information in the switches. So for example, we have a node identifier that we use for these source routing schemes. So we can have, for example, a table in each switch with the specific information of the node identifier or a register, but we need the control plane to set this identifier that's different for each one of the switches.
It's like in segment routing, the prefixed index or something like this, if you know the terminology.
Sorry?
It's like in the segment routing terminology, the prefix index or something like this.
I'm not sure about
So
the traffic
basically
index, but
so
it's similar
basically you
because
have so basically traffic index is prefix index is so you have a loopback prefix and you assign a unique ID for the prefix, and the IGP advertises this network wide, and then you can calculate the path with indexes.
Yeah, it's similar but not the same, because in this case we have exactly a node identifier for each one of the switches, and instead of using a list as a list of hops as in segment routing, we use a modulo operation. We actually reuse the CSC operation, but for
It's
using
Polka or something like
yes,
that.
yes, it's this yes, this protocol. So for performing these, we need to. It's very simple. We just need an ID that's configured for each one of the nodes. So the control plane is quite simple, but we still need to.
I am just pushing this segment routing thing because it's already on RFC, and distributing the ID is already there. So only small modifications are needed here, I think.
But it's similar. It's also configuring ID of the node, and it's we don't have much complexity in the control plane side, but we need to do that and understand how to do that using Freerouter, and also how to design the unit tests in the way you have developed in the RARE repository.
Yes. Okay. Okay, then I am. Jordi, can you please enable the screen sharing for us?
One thing before you start, Xaba, Cristina,
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. Polka is able to forward traffic using no entry, predefined entry on the data plane.
Yes, it's right.
The forwarding decision, which is the egress point at the local node, is simply identified after the modulo operation that is using the CRC function, which is an external function from the Tofino. Am I right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
great.
it's right. The only point is as we use the CSC polynomial, we need to configure it, and that's why we need this ID. So we use this ID to select the polynomial in the CSC operation.
Okay, so this means that at the we need two functions. One that is the Polka forwarder at the core side, and the Polka that is setting the path of the traffic at the edge.
So basically, in FreeRtr, when you configure when you want to configure a source routing path, then you have to put the router IDs that you want to traverse through. Basically, you can use directly IDs for Polka. It's an option, but I think it's much nicer for an operational point of view when you can simply switch between the tunnels. And this is why I am pushing this IGP thing a bit. Then you can list your nodes that you want to traverse, and Polka will behave the same that traffic and RSVP traffic engineering or segment routing traffic engineering, and for this lookup, the IGP can do the work that it can bind the Polka ID to the IP address. I mean the prefix.
Yeah, in our case, we have the
So,
edge and the cores. So
yes.
in the core, it's very simple. We just set this ID because we need a different ID for each node. In the edge, then we have the tables because we need to do this mapping, as Frederick said, between the route or the path ID and classify the flows. So it's probably
basically, if you only needed the edges, then there is another protocol, BGP, that can bind IDs, prefix segment IDs to only the edge prefixes. So if you don't need the IDs at the core mapped, then then BGP can also do the trick. But it's the same structure in FreeRouter, so you can populate. So once you can populate one, then you can populate all.
Yeah, because then we need to populate these tables at the edge where we have the mapping to classify the flow and tag the root label. And at the core nodes, then it's just the node ID. It will use the root ID and the node ID to get the output port. It's very simple in the core.
And to be honest, I already got the patch from Dominic, so I saw the Polka thing. If it's the same, I agree that it is not too hard. But the only thing that I saw in the P4 code was some static mapping. I mean, the coefficient of the CRC is somehow statically mapped to the node ID. Sorry, in backwards. So the node ID is statically mapped to the coefficient. I was thinking a bit, and I tried to write.
This was a limitation. I'm not sure. We have still to explore, but it seems that I'm not sure if they correct that in more current versions, but it was a limitation of the P4 implementation at Tofino. So we were not able to define in real time the CSE polynomial. So that's why, as we could not
you mean that the coefficient cannot be initialized from a register or something like this?
Yeah, the extern from Tofino, it was not able to define the CSE polynomial, configure the custom CSE polynomial in runtime.
I see. So this is why there is a lot of if defs, and the node is populated up to 10. The thing is that I tried to make the same code in Java for FreeRouter to start the work when I got the patch from Dominic, and I also have the PDF about the white paper of the Polka. But to be honest, I was not able to come up with a with a function that can generate the coefficient for the from the node ID. So it's a bit black magic for me. So this is one point that obviously need to be solved for the Java forwarder. And then the next point, I think it's not too hard because FreeRouter already have an Ethernet compatible CRC32 library built in. So I think we can use the same, we can reuse the same library built in. I think it's not too hard to have the forwarder afterwards. And when these 2 points are ready, then I think okay, after the VC, I will forward you the original mail that I sent to Dominic. It's a bit tricky, but I have written that the forwarder, I mean the pocket deparser and the pocket parser and the forwarding decision, that is you make the modular division, I mean the CRC division, and the remainder is the port ID, if I remember well, and the dividend is the next node, if any, if I remember well. It's not too hard to have, I think, afterwards.
For the root ID calculation, we have a Python library that we can install via pip, and but using this to use this Python library, you just need to know the nodes in the ID of the nodes in the path and the port IDs that define the path. Then it calculates the root ID. So we could use that in the control plane side.
Okay, but in FreeRouter it's fully Java stuff, so I think calling out Python is not a good idea.
Yeah, but
so
we
have
can
to convert it. We have to convert it to Java.
But we already have the logic.
Yes, that is great that you have the logic, because I read the paper and I was not able to figure out how to provide a valid pass with the CRC libraries in hand.
So essentially, there is 2 steps. the ultimate steps, of course, would be to implement Polka within Freerouter with a P4 data plane on Tofino, using this CRC
which is
extern,
there. Which is there.
Which is there already.
I have the patch, so we can assume it's there.
So this is the second. But the first step is to provide Polka, but not only on Tofino, but in Freerouter itself, using
so the idea
using GPDK or software forwarder.
So the idea behind this, yes, the idea behind this is that let me show you something. If I am sharing the screen or not, let me double check.
But Frederick, I think that to provide Polka in other target that is not Tofino can be a second step. I think the first step is that we are able to modify the control plane code to set the correct information and configure the switches. And I think once we can do this run a unit test in Tofino, I think it will be easier to understand what we have to do to extend the data plane side to other
for the unit test, if I am sharing the screen, let me show you how a Tofino-based unit test is built up. I think they are the P4 lang routing guys, and this is how it looks like. R1 is the control plane router here. This guy have this dummy loopback where the BF forwarder connects to. If I remember well, I also got the BF forwarder patch from Dominic, so it's already there to program the tables in with his patch up to that. Okay, the DHCP is needed because this virtual machine, I have a virtual machine that is populated with BF switchd, with the software-based BF switchd, and this is what is spawned up and tested against with. You have the Sdn interfaces. They are the data plane interfaces exposed by the data plane VM with the BF switchd. And here is the P4 server for it, and some static routes here and there pointing around the Sdn interfaces. And now I spawn up some. Okay, R2 is a dummy thing. This is the data plane tester VM. It have no config at all, just the interfaces pointing to the dummy. And some other FreeRtr surrounding the data plane VM. The Ethernet interfaces are bridged to be to see if it rewrites correctly the MAC address and so on. And then it basically the same static routes and the ending some ping tests. So this is how it is built up. Basically, the thing. Unfortunately, I don't have a good drawing, but Frederick is planning to do it. So the thing is that imagine a star, which is the middle of the star is the data plane VM, and it is surrounded by a lot of FreeRouters, and traffic is passed through, and the ping is tested if it works or not, and finally it's checked if it happens in the data plane. So this for this to happen, we will. Yes.
Just one question. When you are describing this test, how is it mapped to the Tofino switches? Because is it already mapped to the real Tofino switches that are in the test? But for example, in our test, we use it for one in Amsterdam, Poznan.
So basically, it's run locally in a virtual machine, but but it's the same BF switchd that is running on a real switch. So this data plane VM has the same Tofino bin and the same BF switchd that is on the P4 lab.
Cristina, sorry, Xaba, let me help in answering this question. Cristina, what Xaba is showing you is how to elaborate a test with the BF switchd virtual model that you already know. So essentially, you are writing the same test, you are putting a BF-switch-G virtual model, the thing that you already use in your Git repository, and you are good to go. The only thing here is that you have, sorry, Saba, can you show me the Sdn interface?
Yes, yes, yes.
Sorry, here you have here, if you remember, the VETH in the virtual model has 12 virtual interface. Here we are using only 4 interfaces, and let's imagine a star where in the middle you have the data plane. And this is what he's explaining to you. So in order to answer your question, it maps the BF-switch-G virtual model, and you can do all the tests, first test using the virtual model.
Yes, but for this to happen, you will need pockets from the surrounding software-only routers, and this is where the questions when I describe you about how to calculate the pass with the coefficient, how to generate the coefficients for a given node ID. So the surrounding FreeRouters for a Polka test will need to be able to generate a pass through the data plane VM and calculate calculate the pass to all the destinations, and also will need to be able to generate a pocket and create the header, and on the receiving side to parse the header. And these 3 things fully in Java, because this is how FreeRouter works. So so yes, that's the point with this.
So for example, a very simple example. I have an ID. We can see it just as a number. I have to set that identifier in the node ID of the switch.
Yes,
in the data plane.
yes. This, so basically in the data plane. So when okay, so back to the beginning. When you have the knowledge, I have the practice. You have the knowledge of Polka, I have the practice of FreeRouter. Here is my deal. So if you came up, if you somehow can came up with the 3 functions, that is to calculate the pass and encode it to the Polka. If I remember well, it's a 64 or 80 bits header. I cannot recall it. So if you can came up with that function in fully Java, not using any external libraries, and also to came up with the node to coefficient mapping, it is needed to the decoding part. So basically, it's 3 small Java functions to encode. You told us that you already have it in Python. I think the decoding part and the coefficient calculation, explicitly the output port calculation and the next node calculation, which is the modulo operation, if I remember well, in the Polka thing. So if you can keep up with these 3 functions, then I am willing to put the rest to FreeRouterize this forwarder, because I also really want to see this Polka working. It's not a big deal. Basically, when these calculations are there, then just some pocket magic. Let me show you really quick some examples. I think if you are familiar with MPLS, then you will see what I mean. I think it is in the IP MPLS part. It is. So basically, I just do the calculation for the MPLS. I write the dword and that's it. So basically, this is how the pocket is prepared, and this is how the calculation is done. If we were talking about MPLS, then I would ask you to do the calculation, and I will do the rest, including all the Sdn interface, the prefix to ID mapping of the edges of the nodes on the core nodes and so on. Only I need the calculation because that's the hardest part, I mean, in the Polka terms. To have the rest is really not a big deal, because there are some clients, and for example, if we stick to the point-to-point traffic engineering, then it's really not a big deal. A lot of config variables that I set by the user, the target, the forwarder to use, I mean the VRF, and so on. What is it? Okay, some TE parameters here, but basically all these guys are implementing an interface type, and that's it. And when they implement an interface type, then they have some things like get MAC address and set filter, but it is FreeRtr internal. You really don't have to deal with it. It's not a big deal. If you want, then I can show you how to do it. But I think it's much easier if you know where the Polka, then the help us have the Polka calculations. Basically, the rest to have the counters here, it's really not a big deal, and it's an interface. So basically, if we go back to the interface class where this is defined, then here is how an interface have to look like. If you see, it's a public interface, and you have to implement basically the send packet and the receive packet. They are the two main functions to have a new interface. For example, a Polka tunnel. What happens when the interface flapped, or to have the counters on it? Just leave these boring things for me, because I well know that from where to copy them. Basically, the more interesting thing is to have the send packet.
Okay, and I understood. And the tests we have performed so far, we had few nodes. So we normally
you mean
just
you have wait a minute. So for the tests, so when we have the when we have the Polka calculations, and so when you gave us the Polka calculations, and I have finished the rest, which is almost a hour maximum, because I know it from heart that how it should work. I think a lot when I read the document and the patches. So when we have all this together, then I will write a lot of tests for it. You also don't have to make your hands dirty with it. Let me do the tests also. First of all, I will introduce a lot of Freerouter to Freerouter tests. So for example, so we have 2,400 tests, and only about 300 P4 tests. So basically, the thing is that when first of all, I will make a lot of point-to-point Polka tests, which is much simpler than the before showed big VM with 4 surrounding routers. In this test case, you only have 3 routers and much smaller configs. It's only one screen, and all the IP address is rollback and some pings between them. And obviously some shows that appear on the FreeRtr webpage automatically. So when I got the Java functions for the Polka stuff, then I will write a lot of FreeRtr internal tests for it. That test if FreeRtr data plane can calculate the passes through any size of network with any topology and so on. So I will play a lot with within the test cases with the Polka thing. They will be FreeRtr only tests at the beginning. The next phase will be that I will make myself a pull request with the patch I got from Dominic, or the latest. I don't know if you developed it further or not. So I will merge that patch, and then when I'm pretty sure that FreeRtr can fluently speak Polka and can calculate all the passes for itself, then I will test against the Polka VM. I mean, then we will populate the MISC folder and the P4BF guy, and I have to include here for the Polka. It's already stored. Sorry. It's already stored here. This is my Polka collection at the moment. The Polka patch, and and this is the interesting part that I was not able to calculate, and I have given up at this point because I saw that, okay, it's enough for 10 nodes, but what about if I have 30?
Okay. Yeah, the point is we We were looking for a way to implement that in Tofino. I can send you, because they said that it should have some, I don't know how long it will take, but they should have a patch for that in Tofino for dynamically configure the CSC polynomials, but I don't know if they will do that or not in the short term. So as we have few nodes, what we do at the moment, we have these coefficients, they are irreducible polynomials. So we calculate a list of irreducible polynomials, and as we cannot set them runtime, we just have a list at the moment.
Yes, yes, yes. I see, I see.
So it does not matter for us at the moment which node will receive each node ID, because they only have to be co-prime between them. So for any node, we can pick one of these node ID. There is no problem about that.
Okay.
As we are not able at the moment to set this in runtime, I don't know how to do that in a different way, because even if we calculate a different node IDs, there is no way to do that as we understood in the P4 code now, because of the
Okay,
Tofino implementation.
It's the P4. It's the P4 guy. It's the P4 guy. To be honest, I am fine with this 10 node IDs. So I only was curious about these numbers. So I was thinking that how the heck were you came up with them?
These numbers are irreducible polynomials. It's enough for our forwarding calculation that they are co-prime between them. And one way to get that is if you assume that all the node IDs are irreducible polynomials, they will for sure be co-prime. So that's the only requirement for running Polka. So the node IDs have to be irreducible polynomials. We calculate 10 irreducible polynomials and use then. It doesn't matter which node will get each node ID. So for us, this was the way we could do a viable implementation in Tofino now.
Okay. Okay.
So this means that in the code I'm seeing for the coefficient, and so the coefficient we can come up with a function, for example, node 1, and compute the coefficient, because based on the requirement.
They are doing it because somewhere I saw these functions.
Okay, no, because it seems that it were statically.
Yes, it is here.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because then we will we only have to set in the core nodes, we only have to set the ID from 1 to 10, just set different IDs for different nodes, and then they will be mapped to that CSE polynomials. The only reason we do that, it's because Tofino does not support at the moment to set the CSE polynomials in runtime.
So basically this coefficient must be a constant at the moment.
Yes, in the compilation.
Okay. But
maybe I will check with Vladimir from Intel,
yes.
because maybe they corrected that, but the last time I checked in the forum, I forgot the name, the FASTA forum from Barefoot Intel, they said that it was not possible to do that. So it was a wreck to be able to do that in Tofino.
Okay. So basically my idea that I will basically pick this patch and merge it. I cannot do anything about it because it is the stuff.
But then
yes.
You still need to we still have to port our Python code, because once you select the nodes, And then when you select the path, you have the node IDs and the port IDs, and then you calculate the root ID. And so
I think I
you
remember
still,
it was somewhere here, but the calculations, yes, obviously needed.
when we perform the forwarding operation, we get the root ID from the header, and we do a mod operation with the node ID. That's basically the CSC polynomial. Yeah, this. Okay.
I think
So
it is.
yeah,
Yes.
we get the root ID. The root ID is in the packed header.
It is a pre-calculated magic that you said it is for
Yes,
it's you
it's
have
the
in
path
Python.
identifier.
Yes. It is the encoded guy. So every node makes a CRC calculation on this pass ID, and then gets basically it's a modular operation, if I understood, and the reminder for itself is the exit port, and that's it.
Yes, exactly. So this is the modulo operation. It's just written to we use the CSC, but these lines are the modulo operation. So this is the modulo operation of the root ID by the node ID that gives the port ID. So the root ID is in the packet, and we need to set that in the edge. So the edge will include the root ID. So it will have to have a table entry that will classify the flow and give a root ID to that flow that will identify the path.
Exactly. This for this to happen. So for this to happen, if you remember last time what we did with I think I can show you in the lab. Oh no, sorry, it is not that guy. It is not that guy. It is it. So if you remember from last time, we showed you some traffic engineering magic. And there was it is tunnel 1122. So this is the list of nodes, and all of these guys have an ID associated. Root with this guy. So it have a segment routing index 3. It's populated by OSPF at the moment. You can think about it as a node ID for Polka.
Oh, great.
And basically this pass. So these guys all have, these prefixes all have an index associated. So this is why I am pushing this segment routing thing, because it's very, very similar.
Okay, no,
and
it's perfect. It will work.
And at this point, when this guy wants to send the packet to this tunnel, basically, imagine that it is not point-to-point T, but it's a Polka is written here. Then we have to encode this node list to an index list, basically to a root ID in Polka terminology. So this is why I'm asking you to have that calculation in Java, because if I have it, then I can write at least in software that to have this tunnel. When it's done, then I can make a lot of FreeRouter to FreeRouter tests that tests the Java capability to send the packet and encode the node IDs and so on, encode the node IDs to a pass, and finally then. Sorry, then we will have a next step. Basically, I badly want to have it in our DPDK data plane. It's in the native directory, and it is in the forwarder. It is a big C code, but I will write it because CRC and modulo CRC is not a big deal to have in C. It's the same forwarder that we have written in P4, but it's in C. It will be the next step. It uses the same test cases that the P4 move for the Toshiro model, and and then obviously the test cases for the P4 that will test the patch I already have. So this is my big plan.
Understood. Understood. So even if we do not use other data plane targets, you still have to run the tests. You emulate the data plane in this test. I understood now.
Exactly.
Yes, so basically one P4 data plane in the tests are surrounded by three for FreeRouters. So yes, to have a fully tested Polka in P4, we badly need to have it in the Java FreeRouter forwarder. But yes, so and then the tests. So it will be a lot of FreeRouter to FreeRouter tests and some tests that cover the various data planes and surround them with some FreeRouters. And at this point, if we are pretty sure that the FreeRouter can handle Polka correctly, then we can surely test the BSFishD enabled data plane against these tests. This is the big idea and the plan.
So Xaba, can you click on the link I sent on the chat window of Zoom?
Yes, for sure.
Oh no.
Yes, I hope yes, you have. Yes, it is. So basically, this is the BMV2. This is the BMV2 or the DPDK or the BSFishD, the Toshino emulator. This is the data plane VM, and it have 4 legs. And these 4 legs, these guys are other FreeRouters, and they are sending traffic and testing with pings if they can go through. But we can have more tricky topologies, for example, a chain or more longer chain, or basically we can build anything in the test cases to test the forwarding capability of the written Toshino code. But for this to happen, again, we badly need the functions in Java.
So basically, Cristina, the proposal is to to ask you if you could provide these function in Java. So they are purely native. So please also try to not reuse existing code. Come up with your really own a genuine code here. There is a util folder. This is where it is important to present the source code userland. So this is this util folder.
Basically, I think just keep the utils folder. The only interesting thing in utils folder is the bits guy, and it have MSB get 60 or V or D or Q. So to get basically this guy gets so it accepts a byte buffer, and it reads if you know MSB is the how they call it, is the most significant bit. So it reads the most significant bit from the buffer. Basically, it's the same replicated in the pocket, and this is I think the utils is not bad, but the pocket handle directly is more interesting. This guy also have the MSB variants, MSB get V, and we will have a pocket. So instead, okay, you can use the utils and bits, but I think it's much better if you use the pocket holder directly. It's a byte buffer, and you can read write obviously from the offset, and basically that's it. I think the pocket holder, yes, and the utils bits that are needed. And the other thing that I would show you is the crypto library. And the crypto library have a CRC32C. I think it is the polynomial you are using in Polka, and it have a make reverse, a make table entry, and a make full table. And if you need it, then we can populate some others. Basically, you can set an initial value of the CRC. Okay, name is uninterested. You can get the CRC value, and basically you can update. I think this is all you need. Basically, I think the update is the modulo operation after all.
So just to check if I understand correctly, we have to generate this data plane code that will emulate exactly what we do in the P4 code, and also the control plane code that will calculate the root ID.
Yes, basically yes, but don't care about the surroundings. Only the core. Only the core is enough.
The core functionality.
Yes, I will put the rest. So if we go back to the patch, then I think you can leave all these guys alone. For this guy, the only needed thing is basically these some lines.
Yes, yes. And the control plane side that calculates the root ID to tag in the packet.
Yes, obviously.
And for this control plane side, do you have an example, or should I just concentrate in the main functionality?
Only concentrate on the main functionality. I will put the surrounding stuff, so you don't have to deal even with the pocket handle and or the utils thing. Just write that you want the D word here, you want to read the D word here, and so on, and I will do the rest.
Yeah. Okay.
Cristina,
Let me just check. I have the
just
yeah.
a small comment, Cristina. For educational sake, I think you want to still know how to do things. You will write these core functions.
Yeah.
Xaba will do the surroundings, okay?
And you
then
will
what
see in the final commit,
exactly
that what happened because we live on the GitHub. So
and then you will monitor the final commit, and
Yeah.
then you will see all the changes or the steps needed to put your ideas in place into Freerouter. So you will have this commit that will reflect all the surroundings developments, and you have your core functions, and you will see which which zones in the code had to be tailored in order to add something similar to Polka.
Yeah.
Does it make sense for you?
Yeah, that's very important. Yes, yes, because then we also want to do some extensions. For example, this version is just a single path. We want to do multi-path. And if we understand how it works, probably we will be able to do that in next times without asking so much effort from your side.
I see. Okay. If you wish, if it's enough for you, then you can check the final commit. If you wish, we can do an online coding because I think it's 1 or 2 hours to have the surrounding. It's really not a big deal. I did it a lot of times. I think,
so
Felix,
I think it's
do you have
probably
just a moment. I remember that in back in the time I just sent out an AMT commit to the list. It must be somewhere. Somewhere in the mailing.
Cristina, IMT stands for Automatic Multicast Tunneling.
Fredrik, do you have the link somewhere?
No, yes, I have it somewhere, but not.
But where? Okay, we had a lot of mailing about it, but I would like to show you a simple commit because I do sometimes that I show the guys that what I did. Okay, but where is it? Okay, it's a public entity.
I put in the chat the link to our PEEP library. So we will probably do something similar in Java.
Let me see it. To be honest, I'm not used to Python. How can I get the source? Okay, pip install.
Yeah, no, the source is not there, but just to say that the use of the library will be similar, and it's just a matter of changing the language, but the parameters and things like that.
I think I should clone this repository.
Yeah, now I'm not sure if this repository is the
I think it's
not
accessible
but
anymore,
we
right?
updated the code there. Sorry?
Okay,
I think it's not accessible anymore.
I see.
I will check with Rafael. Probably he changed the rep, but I will check. But we have the code we can share with you. It's an open code, and we translated it to Java.
Very good, very good. You already translated or just planning to translate?
No, I'm planning to translate.
Very good. Anyway, are you familiar with Java or is it a completely new thing for you?
Yeah, I'm familiar. I'm not advanced programmer in Java, but I'm familiar.
Very good, very good. Okay, I think we are somewhere here. No, we went too much back in the time. Okay, I have given up. I cannot show you how to add util, but it's really not a big deal. Okay, so I think we agreed that what we would like to ask from you to have Polka, basically the path computation and the modulo operation with the CRC. Do you need anything else from my CRC library, or let me show you again?
I
I
will
think
check, but it
I think the
very
coefficient
similar to the stuff.
basically is the CRC calculation is hidden. It's an extern in Toshino. I think it is the coefficient, isn't it? Or I am pretty unsure how this basically works. I just copy pasted it from Wikipedia back in time, so I am not a big math expert. This is how I make a table. So when I update the CRC with a single byte, then I simply just XOR with this guy. It's a speeded up, so you can see it's a XOR operation on the table entry. I hope you much more better know CRC than me.
There is the code from BMV2 because BMV2 also implements this in software. So I can probably compare, but I have to be able to configure this polynomial. And I will check how BMV2 does that because it offers custom CSC polynomial.
BMV2 also offers the coefficient. Okay, then I will check what they basically do.
You can configure this custom polynomial. So I have to check. I think it's a good idea to check there how they do that.
Okay,
because
then I will.
When you build these tables, normally you build from well-known CSC algorithm. So you already have the tables. And the point is with the custom CSC,
basically this polynomial is the IITF polynomial, but the only difference with the other standard, which is the Cisco standard CRC for their, is it is a different function, obviously, and the only difference here is the magic number that is XORed. And to be honest, I am as noob as you see for the CRC. So this is all I know about it that I have to change. And this is why I asked Freddy that if this magic is the coefficient. Okay, but I will check what BMV2 does.
Yeah, I will check that, and it's possible that to implement that we need to change it a bit or have other classes. Is that a problem?
No. Basically, I think the best idea is to introduce a new CRC with the modular with the coefficient capability if they are not good for us.
We will have to have a class like a custom CRC and
yes. Basically, crypto hash custom CRC or something like this, and and I think that will be fine.
I will check the code and compare the implementations and propose an initial version. I think it's a good way to go. And then if it's okay for you, we start to produce these extra classes for custom CSC.
Okay, it is very good idea. Okay, thanks a lot.
It seems to me.
Yes.
Hi. It seems to me that you could implement the standard CRC that you currently have as like a subclass or an instance of the custom CRC without performance drop. I guess it would just have its own initialization table, implemented from a specific value. So.
Yes, so I had to do it, and it's the same for all the things because the initial decision was not to depend on external libraries. Sure. Moreover, I have a lot of custom hashes because, for example, I have FCS60. It's widely used in back in the time on the serial lines, and Freerouter have a very extensive serial line handling. But this guy hack is this is for the ATM interfaces. The cells uses this table and
Right.
this kind of CRC. So basically, yes, they are all internal. It's much easier for me. And to be honest, I really not care about the performance because nowadays we can export the calculated tables to DPDK or P4. So the calculations which these hashes uses is mostly the control plane protocols, but I badly need them because, for example, BGP nowadays digitally signs their updates. So this is why I have elliptic curve cryptography built in with SCDH or SCDSA. So I must be able to sign every BGP update. So it would be more performance decrease if I call to an external OpenSSH library for every update that I have to verify. Imagine that when this guy gets called in the BGP update process, then we have to learn almost 1 million root within 50 seconds. So it's very heavily used. And the thing is that it's not too complicated to have an elliptic curve because basically just the point need to be have, and it's also copy paste from Wikipedia. So I'm not a big math expert. I just saw how to add 2 points and did some speed up because I noticed that the multiplication with itself is quite often because of the modulo 2 multiplication method I used. So yes, a bit. I cannot judge because so I have some built-in speed tests, obviously, and comparing them to OpenSSL built-in speed tests, it's not obvious that which one wins. For example, it's my local notebook, and if I do some test crypto. I think this 5.4 gigabit is not that bad, and OpenSSL also performs on similar levels. So on the same notebook, basically Java does its best, and they are also extends in Java. So okay, it's not the case for CRC. CRC is calculated by hand, but it's simply an XOR. So we will see the performance of the CRC soon. Okay, so it almost, yes, it's 2.5 gigabits. So it's not that bad, I think. But it is badly needed because Cisco's old trunking protocol ESL. So Cisco's old trunking protocol ESL uses an embedded CRC. So basically, on that frame, you have 2 CRCs. Let me show you. Yes, ESL. And this guy, as you can spot, this guy links against one of the CRC modules, and and to send the packet, I have to calculate a hash on the packet, on the whole packet, and I have to write it is the first. It's basically the location 0. So basically, it's the first double word on a Cisco ISL packet, the CRC32. It's so if I want to support ISL in Freerouter in software, then I badly needed an internal CRC library. So this is why I use I use an internal library and not call to OpenSSL out for every packet and so on.
Yeah, I understand. I think that for our specific case that we depend on the custom CSC, I think it will be good to compare with the BMV2 solution, and then I can point to the I already have some. I think 2 years ago, I went through the BMV2 code, so I just have to remember where it is. I can point to the classes in the BVM2 code and propose something to start.
Okay. That would be great. But as you told that the BMV2 also supports the custom coefficient, then I will check. I will check how they do, and probably I will come up with a custom CRC library. It's really some lines of code, hopefully.
Mhm. Okay, so
I think one question that was not done is, once Cristina has hacked all of this, how does she send the patch to you, and how does she test it? Basically, I think that's
I
the
think
next point.
it will be an informal submission. Just
Yes, it's very good.
code.
Just start communicate. Yes, it's a good idea. Just start emailing and communicating, and I think we can proceed it. As we agreed, we will help each other. So you will do mostly the mass things, and I will do the routine, boring things in Freerouter. It will be a lot of iterations, I think, until we reach something. But it will be a great cooperation, I hope.
Okay.
To be honest, I have read
Thank you
the
very
paper
much.
a lot of times. I thank you a lot. To be honest, I read that paper a lot of, but I saw the formulas here, and it was too many years ago when I learned this. So I not clearly got the idea that how to deal with the coefficients and how to came up with these numbers that are good for a node ID1 and node ID2, and even for the pass, I had absolutely no idea that how to encode the pass. I mean the root ID is the terminology.
Yeah, and from our side, I would say that we are still in the preliminary steps, so we were doing much of this stuff in a quite manual way. So we in the first part of the investigation, we were more concerned in proof that we could accomplish that kind of forwarding in the data plane. So we ourselves were not deep in the control plane side yet. So for example, most of our tests were done in just for that specific case. We set the control configurations, but we were not concerned yet on how the control plane would deal with generic topologies and things like that.
Okay, this is the part where I had already a lot of ideas. As I showed you the prefix index mapping and the segment routing, and the magic part is that it's already there in all of the whitebook, all of the commercial routing protocols. I mean, Cisco IR6 also supports the prefix to index mapping, and and the thing is that if you only need the egress point to be advertised, as you told in the beginning, but I have some concerns about it. So if you only need the egress points, then also BGP can do the trick. They call it egress peer engineering. And the thing is that if you have, so imagine a rack where you have the top of the rack switch, and all on the ports there is a different server connected. And now think about if the server is talking BGP, and the top of the rack switch obviously talks BGP to the server and receives the packets, receives the prefixes that the server advertises. Basically, they are the VMs that are living on the server. And on the egress prefix maintenancing, you can assign a specific ID to a server. So in that case, you won't map the ports directly, but the server ID. This is another thing that I was thinking a lot about it when I saw your patch to the to the P4 code, because this egress peer engineering is very tricky, because okay, you have a single node, but there is a multi-home server, then you can assign different peer IDs to that same server on the 2 different legs of it. So the server can have 11 on the leg 1 and 12 on the leg 2. And at that point, from any other side of the network, you can address the port 1 or the port 2 explicitly.
Oh, that's a very, very nice discussion. Thank you, Kisaba. You touch in a sensitive part because we don't have much experience on these quite operational aspects. So we were kind of doing, how can I say, a proof of concept of our original idea, very academic oriented. So this whole control plane and operation and management aspects that you couldn't recognize in the paper, it's actually because they were really not there.
I see.
So we were kind of proving the concept that we could apply this kind of shift of paradigm for forwarding, but
I see.
We still have lots of. You are right. We still have lots of things that we have not pushed, and we have to go in this direction now. But it's not there yet. You are right.
But to be honest, when I read the paper, first of all, I saw the very good idea that okay, it could work. To be honest, I didn't got the proof, but but I saw that okay, there are 3 guys who wrote 5 or 6 or 10 sheets. So okay, I believe that it works. Then I started thinking that how can we use it in the control plane, and so we came up with it. And finally, my idea was that okay, the segment routing and the surrounding technologies that are much like to this. This is why I am pushing these things to you, because I have a strong belief that if we have the functions, I mean the calculation functions, then it can have something that dynamically routes traffic through a network via signaling through OSPF for ISIS, the node IDs, and have an egress multipass through a server with BGP egress engineering and so on. So I was thinking a lot about it. That how can we populate these tables?
Simon, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. I remember I also read the paper, and I think I found an inconsistency. I don't know whether I think I failed to send this to the authors, or whether anybody else told you. I think there's a mismatch between the diagram in Figure 1 and the description of the forwarding. I have it here in front of me. Yeah, if you want, I can.
Screen, please.
Yes, I cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing, I think.
Let me share somehow.
Yeah, I try. Ooh, yeah. So this is.
I'm very happy that you read the paper, because normally we
it's
have
wonderful.
the feeling that nobody will really read it.
I'm sure
So first of all, I'm very happy that you're reading the paper.
No, and it's very elegant. But I think I stumbled across this one. I don't know whether you can read this. So if you look at the diagram, so the text claim, so in this figure, the list 110 maps a path specified by nodes S1, S3, S3, and their respective output ports. But then if you look at do you see my pointer?
Yes, we see it.
If you look at the diagram,
yes.
So this is sort of correct if I interpret it correctly. So the first one is this one, and then 1, but then the 0 is actually points back, right? To the S2. So it should have been, I think, 1, 3 is what is meant.
Yeah, is this the final version? Because we had a correction.
Good.
Let me just check.
Good question. Good question.
The published one.
Okay.
Because we
may not be.
We did some modifications.
Okay. Yeah,
Let me just
it
check.
looked a bit like it
Because
was
actually,
maybe.
we had a problem like that in the
Yeah.
last review. We included an error, and then we corrected for publication. Let me just check, because it's
Okay, cool,
actually
cool.
right.
Yeah,
It's actually wrong
don't
there.
worry. It's just I thought
Let
that.
me just check.
Yeah.
But it's 110. I'm quite sure that we corrected that before publication.
Okay, that's good.
One of the many reviews, we included an error and then corrected. But you are right. It's
looked like something like that.
We, if I'm not wrong, we modified the picture before the
Okay,
publication.
cool. Yeah. You're probably right. I was just thinking that it might be a problem that you can have these loopy path values, and so I think it will probably be good to have some kind of a TTL mechanism or something that
yes, it is
prevents
in the header
loops.
it is a good idea to encode in the header, and if we have started talking about the header, the other thing over the TTL is not there, is that I noticed that you are using the ether type of 1 2 3 4, which is which is not a good idea.
Probably used by other people. Anyway, yeah, but that was the only thing, and I
yes,
thought,
but
well,
having a
this is
TTL, having
sure,
a TTL is a very good idea, because loops can happen otherwise.
I think so, and they will keep your paths filled in this case, this loop. But yeah, anyway, it's a minor technical detail, but I really liked the approach and found it very, very fresh and interesting that you could do it like this, and so it's cool. It would be nice to have a high performance implementation in P4, and so all the best for your cooperation with Java. But
thank you very much. These kind of comments are very
important
for
I feel
us,
guilty because
for me, because these when we started with this idea, and then we had some barriers to implement it, and we could implement in the emulator, and then we could prove that we could do this in Tofino. So that was a very interesting path for us. And in my case specifically, I don't have that much production knowledge about this stuff that you're talking about. So it's interesting that we come from this academic view, and now we want to push this to production and have this feedback from you. It's very nice collaboration. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's super nice to work with researchers, and as a research network, we often have to do a lot of like boring operational stuff. So it's cool, at least from my perspective, when you actually meet some researchers and you can do something together. So that's
and to be honest,
I'm very, very, very happy with this collaboration, because we are learning a lot.
Cool.
I also would like to very warmly welcome you on the board. And the thing is that when I read the paper back, then I saw the bright idea behind it. So I got parts of the proof, only parts of the proof, but I saw that it is a really fresh new idea that I haven't read before anywhere. So it's really worth having it.
So
thank you.
We are 15 minutes above the 1 hour session. So this means that we had a very interesting discussion, actually. Any final words you would like to mention, Cristina? Because obviously you were the center of the session today.
Yes, I just want to thank you again. I understood what we have to do now, so I think we have some work to do. We will try to our best to do it quick. Sorry that sometimes we take a long time that we want to respond, but we still have some things going in parallel, so not always we can give a quick response, but I will try to do our best to send these codes to Saba, and so he can analyze we are going the right way. But I understood what we have to do now, so that the meeting was very, very useful for us.
So great. So just to let you know that if you have any questions, feel free to write it on a RAR dev mailing list. In your case, it will be RAR dev.
Okay.
But yes, it's really important to send emails on this list, so we can at least have it and try to look at it. So in order to foster interaction and keep it, this list normally, I'm not the expert here, but normally is archived. There is an archive, so each time people can have a look at them offline.
Great. So Frederick, one question. Things like this custom CSC that may be particular of our case, should we post that in the public list, or should we send by email?
Well,
I think feel free to CC the RARE dev and just to be sure, put me also on the to list, and we will reply as quick as we can. I am very interested. But back to the CRC, I think I will start hacking on as you mentioned that BMV2 also have it, and BMV2 is in C, so I will check their source. So I think I will came up with a custom CRC with the coefficient parameter, but you will have to test it and check if it calculates the right values, because I will blindly copy the BMV2 version.
So if I understand correctly, she has not 3 things to provide you, but 2 things.
Yes, basically yes, because the custom CRC is a thing that I feel that I can achieve with the help of BMV2 source.
So Cristina, feel free to forget about implementing the CRC function.
Just some tests. I mean, prepare yourself with some values that you can easily check if it's the correct for the given coefficient.
To test. Okay, I will, after this meeting, I can just point some classes at least, so you don't take too long to find them in the code, because I already know where they are.
Perfect.
Thanks.
We have a deal then.
Yes, I think.
Yes.
So just to let you know that we started to work with Polka with the UFES team over the last 2 years already.
Yes.
We initially started from a blank page, and I'm really glad to see the progress since 2019 actually. So I wish you a very good end of the day for everyone, and I hope that Italo and Alan, that was not too overwhelming for you, because it's a pretty niche function. I would say a service provider function, but I'm glad to see you there. Thank you, Simon, for your paper review. Cristina.
Yeah, I have to check, because if this was published in the final version, I don't know how to correct.
Don't worry. If the reviewers didn't catch it, yeah, I feel a bit guilty not having sent this earlier, but I'm confident that you, that the final is just I can't access it.
It's probably
it's behind
some
the
error
IEEE
we
file.
included in the final version, so I hope it was corrected. I will check.
I don't know. The idea is clear. It's just when I checked this, I noticed, this can be dangerous. You can actually have these loops, and so the errors happen in practice anyway. So
constructive criticism is always
we don't
welcome.
have erratas.
Yeah. So Cristina, feel free to add a TTL mechanism for this routing endless routing loop issues, so we can at least try to avoid overwhelming the backbone with potential loops. And thanks to you all for being here today. It was a very exciting discussion, and we'll let you for today, and talk to you next week then for the next session. We'll see how it goes, but today was a total improvisation, thanks to Cristina. Thanks.
Yeah, freestyle
notice
meeting.
again that these things are super interesting, in particular in cases where people come with real problems, like Cristina with Polka, or also Carmen with the specific forwarding. And yeah, it's really great. And thanks also Java for. I learned a lot about how new things can be integrated with RARE.
Just a small remark that is related to Kshaba's suggestion related to the fact that the router would be able, the top of the rack router would be able to talk BGP with the other servers. This is actually the tendencies we have now, actually in our case, into another project. We are using extensively a Kubernetes cluster. And all the container, all the pods are discussing all together using a CNI plugin, which is talking BGP. So nothing prevents us to in this BGP cluster to activate a new way to divert traffic between the containers and so on, and find new applications.
To be honest, it was not my own idea. I am reading the Cloudflare blogs and some Google blogs. I think they are, but Cloudflare is very often publish some things about their data centers and how they move traffic. And I have read there about 2 or 3 years ago that they already introduced BGP toward their content engines. So basically, the content sources are talking BGP, and they are in their backbone. They are doing anycast on the loopbacks of these servers, and this is how they can handle that many traffic. But it's just in parentheses. The main idea was in the paper that the blog that they wrote that the servers are directly talking BGP toward the network. And the service IPs are advertised by the servers and not by the first hop routers.
Yep, we do the same. So in 2 different ways. On the traditional data center, we do it like Cloudflare to announce service addresses, like Anycast addresses. And then we have this new layer 3 leaf and spine clause-based data center network where we have something that is called routing to the host, or by Cumulus, and it's a reference design that also uses just BGP to get like the basic underlay connectivity between hosts. Very nice. And there's also a book about by Dinesh Dutt, who used to be at Cumulus, on BGP in the data center. And I think that's one of the variants he describes. And also Cumulus has a very nice implementation where you have to configure almost nothing because the BGP is largely auto-discovering using some relatively new mechanisms in BGP. So it's
to be
really...
honest, I recently put the BGP auto-P discovery to the to-do list, but I was a bit disappointed because recently they started a new draft about the requirements, because there are 6 drafts on how to do BGP auto-discovery. There is an LDP version, there is a UDP-based version. There are a lot of versions.
I think we use the one that uses IPv6 neighbor discovery. And yeah, it's I really like this product. It's very easy to configure.
So it's not a bad idea, and fortunately there are some drafts already flying here, but at the moment I have nothing that I can interrupt test with it. But it's good to know that Cumulus have something in production.
Yeah, maybe we should just deploy it on one of the switches and put it in the data center. Then we could easily test interoperability. Something more for the to-do list.
If you can give me a packet capture, then I would be very happy to see that how they discover the neighborship, because then I can see that if it's an LDP or the UDP version.
Yes.
But again, there are about these 6 versions that how to do BGP neighbor auto discovery. Basically, every vendor came up with their own opinion. Unfortunately, they have not yet concluded.
Yeah. Okay. I'll see what I can do.
Thanks.
I'm pretty sure it uses IPv6 neighbor discovery on the basis, but I'll check.
So Christina, your next use case would be to use BGP to advertise in the external domains your route ID.
Yes,
I'm kidding.
fantastic.
So
I
mostly
will explore
BGP is really useful for interdomain, for advertising interdomain route from domain to another domain.
BGP has been abused for everything.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
yes. Basically, that drafts that are describing that BGP peer auto discovery should happen this and that way is also a good sign that BGP is a thing in data centers. So it's not that bad idea.
Okay. So thanks to you all, and talk to you next week then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Thank you, Cristina.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Nice
Congratulations.
week.
Yeah, congratulations.